At the beginning of the film, we see the main character named Mike, a second-year law student. He walks through the alleys and enters an underground poker club where high-stakes, no-limit games are held. Mike has a natural gift for Texas Hold'em, where the minimum buy-in is $25,000. He regularly plays at low-stakes tables, beating beginners. But tonight, with complete confidence, he decides to play big and buys chips with money set aside for tuition.
So, you're setting the apple. Good. Want a cookie?
No.
Huge wins and losses attracted wealthy people here. But at the same time, many professionals also gathered here. One of them was Joey, a legendary figure in the world of gambling. He's been going to casinos since he was 19. He and Mike have been friends for many years. However, seeing Mike here, he was extremely surprised. Although Joey knew about Mike's outstanding poker talent, he still considered Mike's jump to a higher level tonight too risky a move. Attempts to dissuade Mike were unsuccessful because Mike had already made up his mind. He wanted to win a really big pot and go to Las Vegas to fulfill his dream of becoming rich. Mike sits down at the table and starts playing.
These are community cards everyone can use to make the best 5-card hand. The key to the game is playing the man, not the cards.
But this time, among his opponents at the table was an experienced casino owner nicknamed Teddy KGB. Mike raises again to confuse him. He patiently waited all night and finally got a good hand. At this moment, 2 other players folded. Mike, having an ace and 9 in his pocket, raised another $500. Teddy thought and called. After this, 3 community cards were revealed. Considering his pocket cards, Mike realizes he now has 2 pairs. The probability of winning was very high. Against a beginner, he would have bet small or checked, pretending to be weak. But against the experienced Teddy, he had to do the opposite. Bet big so he'd think he was bluffing. So, he bet $2,000. At this moment, Teddy took an Oreo cookie from the table, slowly thinking about his next move. Then, with no expression on his face, he ate it, took out chips, and called. Mike's tactic worked, because the 4th card on the table is the 9 of hearts. Now, Mike has a full house. Based on Teddy's thinking time and body language, Mike assumed, most likely he's drawing to a flush. Now he just hoped Teddy would complete the flush. Then he could beat him with a full house and take a huge pot. When the last 5th card was revealed, and Teddy really does have 2 spades in his pocket, he'll definitely bet big. And so it happened, Teddy bet $15,000. This unexpectedly large bet made Mike hesitate. Deliberately, so Teddy would think he was wavering. Teddy decisively went all in. Mike concluded his flush is ready. Without hesitation, he pushed all his chips and went all in. Teddy didn't even lose his composure and matched. He slowly took out chips and called. When it came time to show cards, Teddy had a full house, bigger than Mike's. Mike is shocked. He thought he'd hooked a big fish, but didn't expect that he was the big fish himself. Watching his savings disappear in one night, he froze in place. Shocked, Mike left the casino with Joey, and after Mike's words about his lost savings, Joey offered Mike financing to continue playing. The terms are simple. If he wins, they split the money in half, and if he loses, Joey loses the money. But this crushing blow destroyed Mike's dream of becoming a professional player. He firmly decided to quit his beloved poker and start life as a truck driver. 9 months later, Mike actually started working as a driver. One evening, he brought documents to Professor Judge at his law school. This place was a regular gathering for private card games of judges, prosecutors, and professors. The entire city elite. Mike knew about it even before entering law school.
Well, you were looking for that 3rd 3, but you forgot that Professor Green folded it on 4th Street, and now you're representing that you have it.
At the moment of betting, Mike prompts his professor to raise, which other players do. They're surprised by the young guy's assertiveness and don't believe he understands poker. And then the guy tells the judge that he knows what cards he has in exchange for an internship with him. The judge agrees, and the guy guesses all his cards.
Judge Kaplan was trying to squeeze out a diamond flush, but he came up short, and Mr. Eisen is futilely hoping that his queens are going to stand up.
When everyone showed, it turned out the professor had small cards, but all players folded their cards, which helped the professor win the hand. However, despite the professor's invitation to stay, he tried to restrain his impulse and refused. The guy returns home, where his beloved named Joe meets him. She says the guy should hold out a couple of semesters to finally get a normal job, but he replies that he misses poker because it was his dream. She motivates him, and running late, she leaves for work. The next day, Mike's friend named Worm is released from prison. Together, they traveled all corners, earning with cards since childhood. If Mike won thanks to excellent skill, Worm lived by cheating. In prison, he mastered even more new cheating tricks.
Was that like your strong finish or something?
After his release, Worm in the car told how, thanks to poker, he felt very good in prison. He played with whites and took everything from them to lose to guards for favors. And with African Americans, he played for cigarettes to exchange them for something useful. When he drove Worm home, he told him he owed a huge amount to loan sharks. He begged Mike to take him to a big game for the wealthy that his ex-girlfriend found. But Mike stated that he quit poker long ago and no longer wants to go back. Worm, knowing well that Mike is a man of honor and loyalty, said that even before prison, he owed $10,000 to sharks, and then got out of the car. Mike drove a little and thought for a moment, then turned around. He agreed to participate in a game with a group of rich boys. Together, they quickly played the role of suckers. Worm deliberately cheated. He took bad cards for himself and slipped good ones to Mike. Then they exchanged cards with secret signals and cleaned out these rich guys. That night, the two brothers taught them a lesson they would remember for a long time. After the game, the guys left the club and divided the money. Mike again stated that he's not playing anymore, and this game was for Worm's sake, so he'd have money for the first time after prison. The next day, at Worm's request, Mike drove him to a well-known poker club where Mike used to play. Worm started persuading him to play and clean out those beginners, but Mike was categorically against it, and as soon as he left, Worm borrowed $2,000 under Mike's name as capital and sat down to play.
Depends on the grip. Come on, give me 2,000.
On the finger?
You heard Mike, he's good for it. Come on.
Meanwhile, the fact that Mike didn't come home last night led his girlfriend to think he'd returned to his old ways, to poker. She was very upset. Mike denied everything, but she secretly found winnings in his pocket. She saw with her own eyes how Mike lost all his money. That's exactly why she was so angry learning he sat down at cards again. Both were studying law, with a bright future ahead. She was categorically against Mike wasting time on games, because she really loved him and wanted to build a future with him without games. The next day at the university, Joey approaches Mike and says that Worm, thanks to cheating, won a decent sum. In total, with the initial capital, $10,000. But he didn't return the borrowed money to the casino. For this, the debt was recorded in Mike's name at 5% per week. Fortunately, several players at the table played several days in a row without sleep and were too exhausted to notice the cheating. Mike is a man of honor. Despite an important internship that day, he immediately went to Worm with a warning. These people are known Russian gangsters. If they discover it, the consequences will be terrible. Mike advised Worm to stop. He listened and stopped.
Usually credit players only lead with their profit. Otherwise the juice starts. 5 points a week on Mike.
Oh, okay, we'll owe you.
In the evening, Worm goes to a strip club, where his old acquaintance approaches him, to whom Worm owes money. He grabs him and takes him to the bathroom and says he must return $25,000. So, Worm really understands the seriousness. He beats him up. At the same time, Mike, after missing trial practice, comes to the professor at the bar to explain the reason. The professor, who valued this student very much, not only didn't scold Mike, but with lively interest asked about the card game that night, how he actually saw all players' cards through. Talking about poker, Mike enthusiastically explained how he deciphers a person through body language and even shared some secrets with the professor. He added that in a game with them, he could win without looking at his cards. Seeing such passion for poker in Mike, the professor told his own story. He grew up in a traditional Jewish family. At 12, he interpreted the Torah better than a 40-year-old rabbi. The family was proud of him and had high hopes. But one day he realized he didn't want to become a rabbi. Against his family's will, he decisively left for America to study law and found his passion again. Although his parents never spoke to him again, he never regretted it. The professor wanted to convey the main thing to Mike. It's most important to be true to yourself, not to run away from yourself. Mike was deeply moved by the professor's words. After all, he went to law school only to look successful in the eyes of others. But what he truly always loved was poker. not law. After all the professor's words, Mike and Worm go to his place, where Mike discovers his beloved has left. And after that, he dragged Worm to the largest casino in the neighboring city and started playing at small stakes tables. There were many professional players here hunting tourists, but small stakes tables didn't attract top pros, so tourists sitting down at the table one after another were easy prey for Mike and Worm. No matter how lucky they got with cards, their fate was sealed. They'd lose everything. Micro expressions on faces, tense fingers, smoking manner. Every gesture gave away the pocket cards with which the tourists had already said goodbye. At lunch in the casino, Worm admitted to Mike that he didn't have a penny. The one $10,000 was taken by the thug. Worm said he now owes another $15,000. Mike, a man of honor, hearing this, said he was ready to help pay off the debt. But Worm simply suggested winning good money at poker.
It's just like, why didn't you tell me that, man? Why did you not tell me that? I mean, I could have paid that off. I had the money.
Hey!
The next day, Mike was late again for court practice, where the professor and colleagues were waiting for him. He got carried away with the game and didn't even prepare documents for the trial, and didn't know the name of today's case. The professor and colleagues didn't know how to help Mike, seeing that he was unprepared. Mike's girlfriend, finally disappointed, suggested breaking up. Mike didn't make excuses or hold her back. He understands that ultimately, poker is his life's purpose.
I mean, you always told me that this was the rule. Rule number 1, throw in your cards the moment you know they can't win. Fold the hand.
In the evening, Mike drank hard alcohol alone in the apartment, rewatching the video of Johnny Chan's victory at the 1988 World Series of Poker. This man was the prototype of the legendary god of gambling. At this moment, Petra from the casino where Mike and Worm played came to him. She told him that Worm borrowed $2,000 from the casino a week ago and never returned it. Not only that, he continued borrowing money at other poker clubs under Mike's name, and as a result, Mike now owed $7,000. Mike finally realized the full seriousness of the situation and understood that Worm simply betrayed him for money. Mike could only get $1,000 to stabilize the situation, and asked his friend to put Worm on the blacklist. Petra suggested staying and
Could stay.
Then Mike drove to where Worm was hiding and scolded him. He was going to help Worm pay off the debt, but he dragged him into his affairs, and now Mike himself owes $7,000. Seeing Worm in a dead end, having ruined his life, Mike couldn't resist and decided to help him one last time. Now they owed the casino $6,000 and that thug $15,000. There was nowhere to go. They had to go to the thug first for negotiations, because behind this debt stood the gangster casino boss Teddy K.G.B. Yes, the same one who beat Mike. In conversation with the gangster, Mike vouched for Worm's debt in exchange for a 5-day extension. $15,000 had to be repaid. If they don't meet the deadline, the gangster will take their lives. And Mike, who vouched for Worm, won't get away either. There was little time. They used all connections and started cleaning tables nonstop, deciding not to let Worm the cheater participate in the game. Only Mike played at medium and small tables, where he was almost unbeatable. After 3 days of continuous play without sleep, Mike earned about $7,000, but that's not enough yet. After another game, they went to a barbershop to rest. Here Worm told Mike that in prison he deliberately lost to guards, building relationships with them. So he knew about one major poker club in the city hall. If they win there, paying off debts would be a piece of cake. In the evening, they drove to the club and saw the building was surrounded by police cars. Mike was scared by so many cops. It seemed to him that serious people were sitting inside. Touch them wrong and they'll press you to the ground and teach you a lesson. But the repayment deadline was approaching. Mike had no choice but to take the risk. Going in and playing several hands, he discovered, although police officers were sitting at the table, they turned out to be surprisingly pleasant people. Moreover, the cards were going well. Soon he won more than $4,000. It seemed one more hour, and the debt is closed.
How are you? Hey, Les Murphy. So, what are you guys playing?
It was at this moment that Worm ruined everything. It turned out that on the street, he met a gambling police officer and persuaded him to take him to the table. As soon as Worm sat down, old habits took over. He started cheating, slipping good cards to Mike. To avoid getting caught, Mike had to fold several hands in a row. Seeing Mike wasn't moving, Worm secretly rushed him. but his nervousness alerted the police officer sitting nearby. Suddenly, someone's hand grabbed Worm's hand right during the deal. The others gathered at the noise. The experienced police chief exposed his trick on the spot. As soon as Worm opened his mouth, he was immediately hit in the face. Everyone piled on, grabbed them both, and gave them a good beating. As a result, the two beaten men were thrown out, and all the money they had was confiscated. Looking at Worm, the culprit of all troubles, who was still complaining loudly, Mike finally understood. If he continues with him, no amount of lives will be enough. He made a decision. He's breaking all ties with Worm. Since Worm ran away, Mike, as the guarantor, had to bear all his debt. In a dead end, he went to his close friend Joey to borrow money. But Joey was extremely disappointed. He repeatedly warned Mike to stay away from Worm, but he never listened. And before that, Mike recklessly jumped to a higher level and lost everything to Teddy. Giving Mike money is like throwing stones into the sea. Besides, Joey himself doesn't have much now. Before leaving, Mike told Joey, back then, he didn't jump above his level. He was sure. His skill had already reached that level. A few months ago in a major casino, world champion Johnny Chan sat at the table, and Mike found himself at the same table. Mike opposed him for a whole hour and almost always folded. In his heart, he dreamed of beating the champion. In one hand with bad cards, Mike still bet big and made a re-raise. Mike hesitated for a second, then, with an impenetrable look, raised again. Chan observed him. Finally, realizing he couldn't read him, he folded. Mike successfully bluffed with a bad hand against the world champion. It was on that day Mike realized his skill had reached a new level. After this, Mike had no options and went to the professor to explain the situation and ask for $15,000 to pay off the debt. It must be said that $10,000 at that time was a very serious sum. But the professor, after long hesitation, still decided to lend Mike $10,000. He said that when he left home many years ago, his mother was practically broke but still supported his departure. And the professor understood. His most beloved student now, like himself many years ago, is making the most important choice of his life. Mike was deeply moved. In this hopeless situation, the only one ready to help him turned out to be this respected teacher. Then he returned again to the very underground casino where he suffered a crushing defeat. He decided to use the $10,000 as a stake to win back and get out of the situation. Teddy KGB looked at his former defeated opponent and suggested a one-on-one game. Mike gladly agreed, each with $10,000 in chips, no right to add, until one loses everything. In the first hand, Mike was lucky. Pocket kings. He confidently bet $1,000. Teddy smirked, wanting to immediately establish position. Without thinking, he raised to $5,000. The only hand capable of beating kings, only pocket aces, but the probability that Teddy has them is very small. Moreover, secretly observing Teddy's reaction after receiving cards, Mike didn't notice signs of a strong hand. After thinking, he pushed all his chips and went all in. Teddy, seeing Mike's decisive action, reached for an Oreo cookie again. After thinking long, he decided to himself, such a desperate bet means a strong hand. He put down the cookie and folded. In the very first hand, Mike took half of Teddy's starting capital. And in such a duel, the number of chips is more important than the quality of cards. Soon Mike used his advantage and cleaned out all of Teddy's chips. Now he had $20,000. He returned the debt of $15,000 and had $5,000 left. Mike immediately stood up and was about to leave, and at this moment, Teddy switched to mocking mode. He sarcastically called Mike a man who came for fast food pennies, saying he only lost Mike an insignificant portion of his own money, meaning Mike is still at a loss against him. Mike understood perfectly well. This is a provocation, but he had absolute confidence in his skill. Mike took the bait and both sat down again, each with $20,000. After an hour of struggle, Teddy's chips began to steadily outweigh. The situation was not in Mike's favor. On the table lay community cards, 8, 3, 5. While Mike hesitated whether to bet or not, he saw Teddy take an Oreo again and eat it, and suddenly understood this subconscious habit of Teddy's. Everything as before. Has a strong hand, eats a cookie. No strong hand, doesn't eat. At this moment, Teddy bet, and Mike, without thinking for a second, revealed his pocket cards, ace and 5, and folded. He read, Teddy has at least a set, or better. Teddy was extremely surprised. He couldn't understand how Mike with 2 big pairs could get away from this deadly hand, and suddenly realized himself. It was his gesture with the cookie that revealed the strength of his hand. In rage, he threw all the cookies away. In the following hands, Teddy began to lose his composure. He was eager to take all of Mike's chips. The impatient and hasty playing style led to an increasing number of mistakes. The night showdown finally reached the decisive hand. Mike has 8 and 9 in his pocket. Community cards on the table. 6, 7, 10 of the same suit. Together with Mike's pocket cards, this gave a straight. The probability of Teddy having a flush was small, but Mike checked, pretending to be weak. Teddy decisively raised $2,000, pressing Mike. Mike called. The 4th card, a deuce. Mike sighed and checked again. Teddy caught this micro-expression and continued betting big. When the last 5th card was revealed, ace of spades, Mike checked again. 3 checks in a row, feigning weakness, convinced Teddy his hand is winning. Smugly, he pushed all his chips and went all in. Teddy finally took the bait. Mike pushed all his chips, revealed pocket 8 and 9, which together with the community cards made the lowest straight. Teddy, seeing this, exploded with rage. He showered Mike's entire family with curses. But he couldn't do anything. Mike beat him before his very eyes. And although he lost on his own territory, Teddy had no choice but to accept defeat and pay. At the end of the film, Mike pays off all debts, returns to the university to arrange academic leave, and gets in a taxi to Las Vegas. He followed the call of his heart, embarking on the path to his dream.